Today, we are going to build a brand new PC from scratch. Well, not from scratch because I've received components here and there over the months. As you know, getting a GPU card is extremely difficult in these pandemic times. The reason why we're building this machine is because we are editing a lot of DaVinci Resolve videos. These videos are for weddings, engagements, as well as these YouTubes that you're watching right now. Previously, I was using an Intel i7-6800K. It was working perfectly fine to edit 1080p footages, but now that I've upgraded to 4K, the i7 is just not good enough. It will stutter here and there. It will take its time trying to open a file and play it. I wasn't too worried about rendering times, but I was having difficulties trying to edit footages and the machine just couldn't keep up. Finally today, we are going to upgrade almost everything. Everything except the hard drive. So this is an ASRock motherboard. Here is the PCI Express 5 for the GPU. We will be installing a Aorus 3060 GPU card in it. Luckily, there is no hash limiting, so maybe I'll mine Bitcoin later on. But for now, it's not for mining. One nice thing it has is two M2 slot for hard drive. There's another M2 slot for Wi-Fi. For sure, there's no way to stick a SSD in there because it is too small. It will hit this PCI slot right here. I'm not going to use a Wi-Fi slot because I can't stand Wi-Fi. It's just too slow, not good enough, and not secure enough as a Cat5 or Cat6 cable. This motherboard supports DDR5, so this is what we will be using. I'm just only using one stick, and I think that's good enough, more than good enough. Let's start installing these components. I like to lay mine on the desk because I don't want to put everything into the case, and then it would be just too cramped. First, we're going to install the RAM. All you have to do is push these out of the way. You can see I already pushed it out of the way in this slot right here. Take your RAM and press it down into the groove. And then this mechanism will auto close upon itself to hold the RAM in place. As you can see, there are many slots for these RAM sticks. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to install it into the A2 slot. For whatever reason, it's A2 slot because it's mentioning as first, label as first. I don't know why it's not A1, but it's A2 slot. So this is the slot that we're installing it in. Next up, we'll be installing the Noctua fan. This fan is huge, and that's why this bracket is even bigger than most bracket before. Grab one of the screw. The screw end has a triangle on it. You'll want to put this into the triangular slot and then make sure that this is all the way on top. Here you can see there's room on the bottom, so make sure this screw is all the way on the top. Also make sure that you are looking at this caution sign. If you don't see this with this configuration pointing that way, then you're doing it wrong, as I did before. Do this for all 4 screws. Here's another angle of it. You'll want to make sure the screw fits into this slot. Next, grab one of these plastic spacer. It will hold the screw in place so that the screw doesn't wiggle around. Do this for all 4 screws. To install these spacer, all you have to do is just slide it in and it will lock into position. Once you've done the spacer for all the 4 screws, now you can flip it around and this should stay securely as seen in this picture. It is facing downward while this is facing upward. Go ahead and slide the bracket and the screw into the motherboard. We're looking at the motherboard from the bottom, so this is all from the bottom. Make sure that it fits into the 4 holes of the motherboard. And of course, this is what you should be seeing. You should not be seeing that caution label earlier before. It should be secure firm 2 that you're seeing. If you flip the motherboard back to the other side, this is what you should see. You should see 4 screws coming out from the bottom. Next, use these 4 blue spacers and put them into all of the 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Before you put on this metal piece, on the two sides. Verify that your chip has been installed. See this black piece that's protecting the pins? Now is the time to remove it. I didn't remove it in this section, and that's why I have to redo everything. But I'm going to save you the time and trouble to do it right now. So don't put this metal thing on yet. Remove this clip by pressing it down and then sliding it outward so that you release the hatch. Or at least that's what I call it. I think it's called a hatch. Then you can finally remove this whole black piece. Once you remove this black piece, go ahead and install your Intel processor in and then lock it back down by doing everything in reverse. Alright, now that you've installed the processor in place, finally you can put this two metal pieces in. You'll see that there's three possible positions. 1, 2, 3. For this processor that we're installing today, it's going into the number 2 slot. So make sure that's all number 2 in the middle slot. So here's the final correct way to do the installation. You can see that I'm installing the processor. Close this lid down. Tighten the processor into place by locking this metal piece down into this hole again. Install this metal piece into place as before. And then tighten it down with 2 screws. I noticed that when you lock the processor into place, this metal piece was extremely hard to push down. My best advice is go down slowly because you don't want to crack this thing in half. This thing was like $250 when I got it. Once you've got your processor into position with this metal piece down into place and the screws to tighten it down to hold this metal piece into place. There are 4 total screws. You'll notice that I have my bars installed into this position. That's because my airflow will be going from here to there. If for whatever reason you have different airflow, such as going from this way down to that way, then you'll need to install these 2 bars like so. Once you determine how you want the air to be flow, then install the metal bars accordingly. Next, grab the included thermal paste, release this cover, and apply the thermal paste. For this processor, it's recommended to install it in this configuration. A little bit of here and one big goop in the middle. This is what it looks close up, so you can see how much I apply. They want you to release this fan. So in order to do that, grab it, pull it this way, and then lift it straight out. It will release the fan. It looks hard, but it's a lot easier than I thought. On both sides of the heatsink, there's these 2 holes. You'll want to align them into the metal pieces down the bottom and tighten it down with the screw that's already in position. The box does include this screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver. You'll want to go slowly, and this is the way I do it. Here you can see that it's in this position. So I just turn it 180 and then it will be into this position. Next, take it out and do the same thing for the other side. Once you're done with this side, go back to this side again and turn it half of a circle. Do that for each side, swap around every time. You'll feel that this screw right here will be tightened enough. It will stop. So you don't have to wonder if it's too tight or too loose because this screw will stop by itself. Here's another angle. You can see the screw into position. This is the air flow going this way and out into the back of the case. Here's another angle of the 2 screws I was talking to you about. Once you have the heatsink in place, go ahead and put the fan back into its position by doing everything in reverse as before when you release the fan. That means just putting the fan directly next to the cooler. Take the metal clips and try your best to squeeze it back into the groove. This is the groove right here. On the fan, you'll see a little icon, a triangle icon. It looks something like this. That means the air will be flowing this way. So let's zoom out and you can see that this is the front of my case. This is the back. The little triangle starts from here to indicate that the airflow will be going from here all the way to here. From the front all the way out to the back. One of the interesting and annoying thing is that the motherboard did not include any of the screws. Luckily, the NZXT 510 does include some of the screws. Here you can see I have screws from various projects as before, so it's not really an issue. Now that we have installed the major components on the desk, go ahead and place it into the case. You'll need to install at least 6 screws into the case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I meant 8. Hopefully I did install 8 screws. Don't forget to install the back plate into position. Otherwise, you'll be removing these 8 screws again and then putting the back cover plate back on. Yikes. I should know because, again, I messed up and I don't want you to mess up and waste your time. Here's another shot of this back plate cover. For whatever reason, it was really tricky to get into position. But once you get into position, then go ahead, place the motherboard assembly in and then tighten all the screws into place. It's kind of interesting that my old motherboard had more USB ports than this. Here you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My previous motherboard had like 10 or 12. It's crazy. Now I'm going to put the whole assembly onto a very high drawer. I don't want to put this on my desk because mine is made of glass and it will probably shatter the whole glass. This thing weighed about 25 pounds as it is. There's the power supply in position already. There's various hard drives here already, so it adds a lot of weight. We'll be adding a GPU here, and that's even more weight. So you definitely don't want to put this thing onto a weak, tiny desk or else the whole thing will collapse. For power supply, I'm using a Corsair 1000 watt power supply. The first thing I usually do is connect this motherboard power supply first. So grab the end from the back and go into this opening position and then into this motherboard. Everything, all of the wires that you're seeing will be going from the back of the case into some sort of holes and then into the front, into the motherboard. Next, grab the CPU power. You only need one. Again, you'll be going from the back into this opening and then into this position for the CPU power. There's actually 2 slots, but you only need 1. The second slot right here is for if you're planning to overclock in the future, which I don't. Next up, we'll be connecting all of the fans. This includes the CPU fan, the chassis fan. Start grabbing all of the wires from the fan and place them into position accordingly. They will be labeled as chassis fan for your case or CPU fan for the CPU. Next, we'll grab the front panel from the NZXT case. This front panel will go into its position here. It's near the bottom right hand corner of the motherboard. Next, grab the HD audio from the case and install it into its position on the motherboard on the bottom left hand corner. Next, grab the USB 3 from the case and place it into position into this motherboard in this area near the SATA connectors. Because the NZXT case does not have enough USB 3 on the front, there's only one in the front by the way, I had to buy this adapter with 4 more USB 3. It needs power and this is the USB jumper, so grab this jumper and place it into position. This is what it looks like from the back. It's really messy and I have no idea how I would improve it. But honestly, nobody would ever look into the back because this whole thing will be covered up with the panel. This is my main drive, my download folder. I have so many of these 2.5 hard drive, they're becoming disposable, so I just place them and then download whatever and then throw it away if it ever becomes damaged. I don't want to risk the whole 8 terabyte thing, you know. Here's the Corsair 1000 watt and all of my additional hard drive that I use to store videos. Believe it or not, I have all of my 4K videos on these 3.5 hard disk drive. I know they're slower than SSD, but for whatever reason, they're good enough to edit with and play around with in DaVinci Resolve. Now that all of your wires and cables are in position, the only thing that's missing is this GPU. So I'm getting 2 cables to get them ready. It is extremely difficult to install the card in a vertical position. Believe me, I tried. I think I might have snapped my GPU card in half almost. Now that we have the case laying on the ground, it's much easier to just slide and press the GPU card into position. This is a monstrosity card, 3060, with 3 huge fans. It stretches all the way from the back to near the front, as you can see, and it's resting nicely onto this metal piece right here. Kudos to NZXT for having this metal piece for the GPU card to lay onto it. Remember the 2 cables that you prepared earlier? Now is a good time to press those 2 cables into these 2 slots. Here's a close-up of one of them. It will go into this position and another one will go into this slot. Now that everything is installed, go ahead and press the power button. The glass plate of the case that goes into the left side, I wouldn't install it yet just in case there's something goes wrong. So go ahead and press the power button here and let's see how it works. Oh, this is a really bad case mod that I'll do in another video, but as I mentioned earlier, there is only one USB 3 slot, so that's why I want all of my USB slots in the front. Here I'm getting 4 of them ready into position. I'm going to 3D print a cover so that will look nice, but that will be in another video. For now, this is just building this whole computer for DaVinci Resolve 17 to edit 4K videos. This is what everything looks like when it's turned on and running. I know you can't see it in this picture, but the fans are all spinning, from the back fan to the CPU fan to one of the fan in the front and one of the fan in the top. I didn't want to install this fan because I think having 4 fans is more than good enough. You really don't want more fans than necessary because then you'll get into noise issues and electricity issues. So install as much fan as you need, but not more. Oh, by the way, you can install a fan right here as well onto this heatsink. But again, I didn't do such thing because I felt that was overkill. On the motherboard, there are some slots for you to install RGB light strip, but I didn't do such things. Once the CPU all booted up, this is what I see for my hard drives. You can see that they're all cooling pretty well at 34 Celsius as being the max. Looking into properties, these are the components I have installed, and luckily Windows 10 does recognize the new hardware. I didn't have to install any software. I just used the old hard drive from my previous Windows 10 and everything is just recognized and up and running. It's amazing that I have to install. Let's test this setup with all of the video settings all maxed out on HotWheels. This is one of my kids' favorite games, and we're going to be playing it with this NVIDIA controller. This NVIDIA controller is from the Shield series. I don't think they make it anymore, but it is Bluetooth, and so I pair this with the PC that we just built with a Bluetooth USB adapter. I don't believe that the motherboard has Bluetooth built in. Let's go ahead and fire up the Hot Wheel games to see how it handles on max settings. Spoiler alert, it does not work very well with 4K at max settings of the GPU. Some frames drops, some freeze, and that's not a good thing. So again, this whole thing is just for editing videos with DaVinci Resolve, and for that purposes, I'm very happy with it. If you are going to build the same exact setup to play 4K videos, then forget about it. You want something better, different, more expensive. Honestly, I don't even notice the resolution when I'm playing the game. So I just bump it down to 1080p. Oops, here you can see that the game freezes. And then it resumes mysteriously. So To play games on 1080p full max settings, everything will be perfectly fine for that. Let's jump into DaVinci Resolve and see how fast it renders. I'm just going to open one of my old projects. This video is about 6 minutes and 22 seconds. Let's see how fast it outputs 4K to YouTube. We're going to start rendering the process to see how long it takes. So here the video starts at 6:45. Let's fast forward to see when it finished rendering. And it looks like it finished about 11:44. So I know from experience that with the i7 6800K, it's a lot slower, maybe about 15 minutes. And this one took about 5 minutes. Not bad, right? Hopefully this helps you with deciding which hardware to install to edit videos on a Windows machine. I really appreciate you guys subscribing to my channel, and thanks for watching.